Imagine walking into a room and saying nothing, not out of shyness, not out of fear, but because you know the less you reveal, the more you control. This is not a philosophy born of arrogance or secrecy. It is the timeless strategy of those who truly understand power. Welcome to Never Tell People What You Do, a book not about lying, but about liberation, about reclaiming the quiet edge in a world addicted to noise. The age of broadcast. We live in an age where telling is currency. Your job, your dreams, your goals, your opinions, everything is shared, tweeted, filmed, tracked. But in the rush, to tell, to show, to be seen, something gets lost, something essential. You lose your mystery, you lose your leverage, and worst of all, you lose yourself. When you tell people what you do, you box yourself in. When you tell them what you plan to do, they unconsciously judge you, compare you, limit you. But silence gives you space to grow, to evolve, to become more than they ever imagined. The dangerous power of being known. Why do the I? Most effective people in the world operate in shadows? Because once people know what you do, they begin to define you. And if they can define you, they can predict you. And if they can predict you, they can control you. You may not notice it at first, but the moment you say, "I'm working on a startup," or "I'm writing a novel," you've created an invisible audience. Even if they never say a word, their expectations begin to orbit your mind like satellites. And suddenly, you're not building for yourself anymore. You're performing, you're posturing, you're locked in a dance of external validation. Why the smartest people are often the quietest. Think of the most brilliant creators, thinkers, or innovators you've heard about. Often you discover them after the work is done. Their genius doesn't announce itself. It emerges, fully formed, without explanation. That's not an accident. That's design. Naval Ravikant once said, "Play long-term games with long-term people. But never play them out loud. The smart ones know that the more people know, the less they respect. When you speak too soon, people think they understand. And when they think they understand, they stop being curious. They stop being interested. Mystery is not manipulation. Mystery is depth withheld. It's an invitation to wonder, not an obligation to explain. Silence is not emptiness. It's energy. There's a reason ancient warriors trained in silence. Why mystics disappear into the mountains. Why legends are whispered, not shouted. Energy builds in silence. Intent builds in silence. Strength builds in silence. What the world sees as quiet is not weakness. It's pressure. It's tension. It's the coiling of power before the strike. The seed does not brag before it becomes a tree. It disappears, buried, invisible, patient. The cost of premature exposure. Have you ever told someone your goals and felt satisfied? That warm nod of approval? The hit of validation? That's the trap. You feel good, so your brain rewards you. But the reward came before the work, and psychologically, the drive to complete that goal fades. You've already enjoyed the social reward. The system short circuits. Studies have shown this. The more you announce your intentions, the less likely you are to fulfill them. Telling dilutes intention. Silence intensifies it. Why this book exists. This book isn't a manual for deceit. It's not about hiding. It's about preserving your fire. It's about moving from performance to presence, from noise to power, from approval to alignment. Every chapter is a layer peeled back of ego, identity, noise, and narrative, until all that remains is truth, intention, and a quiet form of greatness. We'll explore why. Power thrives in ambiguity. Leverage grows in silence. Goals manifest when no one is watching. Labels limit more than they liberate. The ones who speak least often do the most. What you'll discover, as we move chapter by chapter, you won't find quick hacks or empty slogans. You'll find strategies, mental rewiring, and most importantly, a shift in how you relate to your own identity. Because what you do is not just your job. It's your image, your story, your signal to the world. And every signal you send has a cost. But when you stop sending, when you detach, when you vanish, even slightly, and the world has no choice but to pay attention. Because nothing is louder than someone who does not need to speak. Final thought for this chapter. Ask yourself, when was the last time you built something without telling anyone? When was the last time you kept a win to yourself? What could you become if you stopped explaining and just started doing? The power is already in you. This book is simply here to remind you, you do not need to be seen to be great. You need to become unshakable in silence. Let's begin. Chapter 1, The Trap of Telling. From the book, never tell people what you do. It begins innocently. You have an idea, a dream, a spark of ambition that lights up the mind. And what's the first thing you want to do? Tell someone. Maybe it's a friend, a coworker, a parent, a partner. You say, I'm starting a company. I'm working on a book. I'm going to change my life. They smile. They nod. Maybe they even say, that's amazing. I believe in you. It feels good. Too good. Like you've already accomplished something. Like the dream has been partially fulfilled just by saying it. That's the first step into the trap. The illusion of progress. Human beings are wired for social reward. We're not just biological creatures, we're tribal ones. So when we tell others about our dreams, we receive an emotional treat, validation. But there's a problem. The brain doesn't always distinguish between doing something and talking about doing it. This is called the intention-behavior gap, and it's wider than most realize. Research from New York University showed that when people announce their goals publicly, they're significantly less likely to complete them. Why? Because talking gives you a sense of completion. You get the reward before you've done the hard work. You feel seen, approved, affirmed, and so your motivation, the internal pressure that was supposed to drive you to build, gets released, not into action, but into performance. The Zeigarnik effect and why it backfires. There's a famous psychological principle called the Zeigarnik effect, discovered in the 1920s. It tells us that people remember unfinished tasks more than completed ones. That nagging feeling in the back of your head, that's the brain trying to close loops. But when you talk about your goals, rather than work on them, your brain thinks the loop is already closed. The tension disappears, and so does the urgency. What should have been a personal fire becomes a public story. And stories are easier to tell than lives are to change. The ego wants to be seen, not built. At the heart of this trap lies the ego. The ego doesn't care if you've done the work. It just wants to be recognized. That's why the ego loves titles. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an artist. I'm writing a novel. But ask yourself, are you writing a novel or just talking about one? Are you building a company or just acting like a founder? There's a sharp line between identity and embodiment. Telling satisfies the identity, but only action fulfills the embodiment. The subtle poison of early praise. Here's something few people understand. Praise can be just as dangerous as criticism. Criticism hurts, yes, but it activates resistance. You feel the need to prove something, to act. Praise, on the other hand, lulls you. It gives you the reward without the result. It weakens your hunger. Every compliment received before the real work is done is a withdrawal from your energy reserves. You don't need applause. You need focus. And the most focused people know the applause can come later, if it ever comes at all. Why you tell people in the first place? Let's be honest, we don't just tell people what we do to inform them. We do it to shape how they see us. We want to be seen as ambitious, smart, driven, successful. We want to control the narrative, but in doing so, we expose our vulnerability. We give people a mental image they can judge, criticize, or dismiss. And worse, we hand them the power to create expectations. Suddenly, you're accountable not just to yourself, but to a social performance. What was once a quiet pursuit of mastery has now become a stage play. Strategic silence is not secrecy. It's important to make a distinction here. We're not suggesting that you lie or hide or isolate yourself. This is about preserving clarity. It's about letting your inner world develop without distortion. When you speak too soon, the world distorts your vision. They project their fears onto your dreams. They impose limits you didn't ask for. But silence? Silence is pure. Silence is yours. It allows the idea to mature. It gives you room to change. And most importantly, it keeps the work yours alone. Real builders. Don't brag. There's a saying in the startup world. Real builders don't brag, they build. The most dangerous creators you'll ever meet are the ones who never told you what they were doing until it was already done. They don't waste energy on announcements. They don't need the world's permission to act. Their reward is the result, not the recognition. And paradoxically, they often get the most recognition anyway. Because in a world full of performers, the quiet ones stand out. How to escape the trap. Here's the good news. The trap of telling can be broken, and it begins with one simple habit. Make silence your default. Before you share, ask, is this truly for connection or for validation? Will this help the work or just serve the ego? Am I announcing a seed that hasn't even sprouted yet? Then try this instead. Journal your intentions instead of tweeting them. Build in solitude for 30 days before speaking about it. Share the process. Privately with mentors, not publicly with strangers. Let your results introduce you. Remember, the loudest path isn't always the strongest. And the truest confidence is the kind that doesn't need to be spoken. Reflection, prompt at the end of this chapter, take a moment. Think of one goal or dream you've been talking about a lot. Now ask, what would it feel like to stop talking about it and start working on it in silence? Who are you when nobody is watching? What if your next success story didn't need an audience until it was finished? Final thought, in a world addicted to expression, your silence is not just rare. It's powerful. It's magnetic. People don't remember the one who announced. They remember the one who arrived, fully formed, unstoppable, and quietly prepared. Never tell people what you do. Let them see what you've become. Chapter 2, Power Grows in Silence, from the book. Never tell people what you do. Picture a seed deep in the soil. There's no light, no sound, no applause, but below the surface, something astonishing is happening. Roots are forming. Structure is building. A system is preparing to break through, yet from above it looks like nothing. That's what power looks like in its earliest, most potent form. Invisible, silent, patient. Why silence feels so uncomfortable. Modern culture teaches us that if we're not seen, we're not real. If we're not heard, we're not relevant. If we're not posting, announcing, sharing, then we're missing out. But real power doesn't perform, it concentrates. That's why silence often feels unbearable, because we associate it with absence, when in truth it is presence without performance. It's you unedited. You with no signal to send. You growing deeper instead of louder. The myth of visibility. Power. Let's dismantle one of the biggest lies of the digital age. Visibility does not equal power. It might feel like it does, because we see influencers, celebrities, founders everywhere, but that's not where their power was built. It's where their power is performed. The real work, the leverage, the craft was honed in private. Ask yourself, when did Elon Musk become Elon Musk? When did Steve Jobs become Steve Jobs? When did J.K. Rowling become a literary force? Before you ever heard of them. Before the noise. Energy is finite. Use it. Wisely, talking burns energy. Posting burns energy. Explaining burns energy. And most people don't realize that their output is draining what should have gone into their build. When you hold back your energy, when you channel it into your practice, your systems, your skills, that's when it begins to compound. It's like heat in a pressure cooker. The longer it stays sealed, the stronger the burst when it's released. But most people open the lid too early. They let the heat escape as noise. Strategic stillness in history. Consider. The greatest warriors, monks, inventors, and thinkers in history. Do they announce every move? Do they document every step? No. The samurai spends years in quiet, repetitive training, perfecting the sword. The Stoic philosopher cultivates inner clarity, not outer praise. The inventor disappears into the lab, re-emerging only when the prototype works. The most powerful people don't reveal the storm. They let the storm arrive with them. Silence is not emptiness, it's focus. There's a deep misunderstanding about silence, that it's passive. That it means you're doing nothing, but silence is simply undistracted action. It's the focusing lens through which power is sharpened. While others scatter their energy into conversations, comments, and content, you are building inward, consolidating, layering strength like sedimentary rock. By the time you speak, you've already become someone different. And what you say lands like a strike, not a whisper. You become harder to predict. Here's something vital. Predictability makes you vulnerable. If people know what you're working on, what you're thinking, what your next move is, they can influence it. They can critique it, copy it, sabotage it, or simply drain it with premature curiosity. But when you operate in silence, you become unreadable. And unreadable people are powerful because others don't know whether to fear, follow, or admire. You create mental gravity, a quiet tension. The question, what are they up to, becomes your silent weapon. Magnetic versus broadcast power. There are two types of power. Broadcast power loud, constantly reaffirmed, insecure, visible, but easily attacked. Magnetic power silent, deeply rooted, stable, and visible until it moves. Broadcast power needs attention to survive. Magnetic power doesn't need anything, it simply is. Which kind do you want? Case study. The quiet creator. Imagine two creators. Creator A posts daily updates, shares every step, talks constantly about big things coming. 6 months later, nothing shipped. Creator B says nothing, disappears for 6 months, returns. With a product, a masterpiece, a new standard, who commands more respect? The world remembers those who deliver, not those who promise. The one who builds in silence appears with results that shock. The fear of being forgotten. There's a hidden anxiety that drives people to tell. If I don't talk about what I'm doing, people will forget me. But here's the paradox. People remember those who surprise them. People forget those who blend in with the noise. If you truly want to be remembered, don't chase attention. Emerge with something undeniable. Let the work be so strong it burns itself into memory. You don't need constant reminders if your presence creates impact. Practices to build power in silence. Here's how you begin cultivating this silent power daily deep work sessions. Work without distraction. No sharing. Just building. Digital minimalism. Reduce outward communication. Increase inward alignment. Tight inner circle. Share only with trusted allies who sharpen you, not distract you. Delayed. Gratification. Train yourself to crave the result, not the reaction. Kill the tease. Don't hint at what you're doing. Either do it or don't. Let others speculate. Reflection. Prompt. What would your life look like if you stopped explaining it? Where is your energy leaking through words that should have become work? What could you become if you stayed silent for 90 days and focused purely on output? Final thought. The tree does not shout its arrival. It simply grows until its roots are too deep to move and its branches too wide to ignore. So grow in silence. Let your presence announce itself. Let your results do the talking. And when the time comes, move with such force that the world has no choice but to ask, where did they come from? The answer will be simple. They were always there. Quiet. Building. Waiting. Chapter 3. The Myth of Transparency. From the book, Never Tell People What You Do. We are told, be transparent, be authentic. Put it all out there. It sounds noble, even courageous. But like many ideas adopted blindly by the crowd, it hides a deeper truth. Transparency, when used without wisdom, is not strength. It is leakage. Not all openness is authenticity. Not all sharing is truth. And not all honesty needs an audience. In this chapter, we untangle the difference between strategic clarity and self-sabotaging exposure, between real authenticity and performative vulnerability. The age of radical openness. We live in a time where oversharing has been rebranded as relatable content, where personal struggles are monetized, opinions are gamified, and every aspect of life becomes a post, a story, a confession. Everyone is showing everything, but very few are actually seeing anything. It's no longer enough to do the work. You must also narrate it, explain it, justify it. This is not authenticity, it's performance. The irony? The more you show, the less people feel. The more you talk, the less they listen. Openness is a tool, not a virtue. Let's be clear, transparency has its place. In governance, in teams, in trust building. But it is not a universal virtue. It is a tool. And like any tool, when used at the wrong time or in the wrong context, it does more harm than good. The myth of radical transparency tells you, if you're not sharing everything, you're hiding something. But in truth, if you're sharing everything, you're protecting nothing. Boundaries are not barriers. They are containers for power. Privacy is not dishonesty. Let's destroy a false equivalence. Private, secretive, reserved, and authentic. Some of the most honest people you'll meet are also the most quiet. Why? Because they know that truth doesn't need to be shouted. It needs to be lived, protected, directed with intention. You do not owe the world your story. You owe the world your integrity. Vulnerability is sacred, not strategic. Another myth. If you want to connect, just be vulnerable. This is half true. Genuine vulnerability is powerful, but the moment you use it for influence, for sympathy, for control, it's no longer sacred. It's strategic. It's staged. Not all vulnerability is healthy. Some is premature. Some is manipulative. Some is simply self-harm disguised as authenticity. You do not bleed in public to prove you're real. You heal in private to become whole. The problem with building in public. In entrepreneurship and creativity circles, a popular trend has emerged. Build in public. Share your numbers, failures, sketches, struggles, everything. The Wio's appeal? It looks humble. It builds an audience. It makes you relatable. But here's the risk. You invite spectators into your process, not just your product. You open the doors to opinions, doubts, comparisons. Your vision is now shared. Property, shaped by 1,000 external energies. And slowly, you stop building from within. You start building for them. Why withholding is wisdom? What the modern world calls opacity, ancient philosophy calls wisdom. The Tao Te Ching says, "He who knows does not speak. He who speaks does not know." This doesn't mean you should become a hermit. It means that restraint is a sign of internal fullness. The more grounded you are, the less you need to explain. The more powerful your intent, the more protected it must be. Just like a plant is covered until its roots take hold, your ideas, dreams, and identity must be shielded until they're strong enough to endure the world. Why people love over-transparency? Why do people share so much? Because being seen feels like being validated. And in a world built on digital mirrors, likes, follows, engagement, validation feels like survival. But beware, what feels like connection may be consumption. What feels like freedom may be surveillance. What feels like authenticity may just be addiction to being known. The power of being understood. Slowly, when you tell people everything too fast, they form quick opinions. They box you in. They freeze frame you in their memory. But when you move slowly, when you reveal yourself gradually with patience and boundaries, people don't just hear you. They respect you because they had to listen harder. Pay closer attention. Earn access to your truth. This is how trust is built, not through disclosure, but through discernment. You are not content. Perhaps the most dangerous myth of transparency is this: that your life is content, that your struggles are a story arc, that your relationships are plot devices, that your truth is a brand. You are not content, you are a person. And some parts of your life deserve to be kept off stage, so they can grow in peace. Not every lesson needs an audience. Not every win needs applause. Not every scar needs a spotlight. How to practice intentional transparency. Transparency should not be eradicated. It should be reclaimed. Here's how. Share outcomes, not in-progress identity shifts. Let your results speak. Let your actions narrate. Be clear with your mission. Guard your process. Don't open the oven while the cake is still baking. Use transparency to build connection, not dependence. Your story can inspire, but don't let others own it. Talk less about your future. Focus more on your practice. The future doesn't need witnesses. It needs workers. Reflection prompt. Where in your life are you confusing openness with strength? Are you using transparency to connect or to be approved? What would it feel like to keep your sacred things sacred? Final thought. There is power in what you reveal, but there is greater power in what you choose not to. When you stop narrating your life for others, you start living it for yourself. So, let them wonder, let them guess, let them wait. You don't need to be transparent, you need to be true. And sometimes truth lives best in quiet places. Chapter 4. Identity is a Trap. From the book, Never Tell People What You Do. Who are you? Go ahead. Answer. You'll probably say, I'm a designer. I'm a startup founder. I'm an artist. I'm a writer. I'm a content creator. But look more closely. That's not who you are. That's what you've decided to be, what you've chosen to say, what you've been told is valuable, or what got you applause once, so you kept repeating it. This is the lie hidden inside a truth. You are not your job. You are not your achievements. You are not your persona. You are something much more dangerous to the world's expectations. Unpredictable, evolving, free, and if you believe too strongly in your identity, you'll never escape it. Identity is comfort and a cage. We love identities because they give us structure. I am this means I'm not that. It's clean, easy, definable. But every label is also a limitation. If you say, I'm a content creator, you begin to act like one, think like one, filter your decisions through that lens. What if you're more? What if that identity no longer fits you tomorrow? But because you've told everyone, you feel trapped. You have to keep performing it, even if it's no longer true. Identities are comforting, but they are fossils, and fossils do not grow. The ego loves a name. The ego doesn't crave truth, it craves definition, and so it will cling to any title, any role, any label that gives it shape, even if that shape becomes a prison. The moment you say, this is what I do, the ego breathes a sigh of relief. Ah, yes. Now I know who I am. Now others can know me too. But that's the problem. When you become knowable, you become predictable. When you become predictable, you become controllable. The ego wants identity, but the soul craves freedom. The pressure of consistency. Have you ever felt afraid to change because people know you a certain way? That's the trap. You might avoid starting a new project because it doesn't fit your brand. Stay in a dying business because it's part of your identity. Refuse to grow past your younger self because your audience expects a certain tone. This, I think, is the tyranny of being understood too early. You don't grow, you repeat. Be consistent is good advice for habits. It's terrible advice for identity. When labels become leashes, here's the truth. People like you better when they can label you, because labels make the world less threatening. If they can call you motivational, funny, analytical, creative. They don't have to deal with your full humanity. But the moment you break that mold, the moment you act out of character, they feel betrayed. And so, your labels become leashes. You stop growing in ways that might disturb others' perception of you. You start living in a story someone else wrote. But power, real power, comes when you no longer care if people get you. You don't need to be explained. You need to be undeniable. The world wants you. Simple, you know why. What do you do is the first question people ask because it helps them sort you, place you in a mental file, reduce you to something recognizable. It's not malicious, it's just how most minds work. But when you refuse to play along, when you shrug and say, I do a few different things, or I'm figuring it out, you disrupt the system. You force people to confront your complexity. And complexity is uncomfortable. That's why the world prefers you to be an influencer, a founder, a 9-to-5 employee, a coder, a rebel, a mother, a type. Because if you're just one thing, you're easier to ignore or easier to sell to. But when you're everything and nothing, when your identity is fluid, when you don't cling to any single definition, you become free. You become dangerous. The myth of personal branding modern self-help often preaches, craft your personal brand. Control your image. Be known for one thing. But here's the truth. Branding is for products. You are not a product. You are not meant to be packaged, positioned, optimized, and sold. You are meant to be lived through, not branded. Branding may get you followers, but it may also freeze your evolution. And the world needs more evolving humans, not polished mascots. Let your work speak, not your labels. The most powerful people often don't say what they are. They don't call themselves thought leaders. They don't say, I'm a genius. They don't explain their value. They simply deliver it, and people come to their own conclusions. True mastery doesn't declare itself. It is recognized, not marketed. When you stop telling people what you are, they begin to see what you've become, and that truth is far more powerful than any label could ever be. The joy of being unclassifiable. There is a quiet, electric joy in being undefinable. When someone asks, so what do you do? And you pause, smile, and say, a little bit of everything. Or, it's complicated. That smile, that pause, it holds your power. Because you're not trying to be someone. You're becoming something. Something shifting, expanding, unfolding. You don't need to be understood. You need to be true. And truth doesn't fit in bios, titles, or job descriptions. Practices to escape the identity. Trap. Here's how to loosen the grip of labels and return to freedom. Use verbs, not nouns. Say I write instead of I'm a writer. Say I build instead of I'm a founder. Action over identity. Leave bios incomplete. Let curiosity do the work. Don't over-explain. Start new things quietly. Don't announce. Just evolve. Notice when you feel trapped. Is it your identity talking or your truth? Stay fluid. Reinvent. Change your mind. Outgrow your past. Reflection. Prompt. What identities are you currently performing for others? What part of your life feels limited by a label you once chose? Who could you become if you didn't owe anyone a consistent story? Final thought, every time you say, I am Prozki, you build a wall around your possibility, but you are not your last success. You are not your Instagram bio. You are not what people call you when you're not in the room. You are the space between all that. So let go of the need to be known and become something worth discovering, not through titles, but through truth. Chapter 5, Leverage Without Performance. From the book, Never Tell People What You Do. There's a type of power you can see. It's loud, flashy, wrapped in followers, fame, and public applause. And then, there's a type of power you can't. See? It moves quietly. Builds quietly, strikes once, and shifts the game. That second kind is called leverage. And those who wield it? They never have to tell you what they do, because what they've built works while they're silent, while they sleep, while others perform. What is leverage? Let's break it down simply. Leverage is getting outsized results from minimal input. It's the force multiplier, the amplifier, the hidden system behind wealth, scale, and influence. Leverage means you write one thing and it reaches millions. You build one product and it sells while you're offline. You train one person and they create results without you. And most importantly, leverage means you don't have to perform to be powerful. The trap of performance-based power. Most people build power by performing. They constantly explain their expertise, market their identity instead of their results, post endlessly to remain relevant, build personal brands that exhaust them. It works for a while, but it comes at a cost. Burnout, fragile reputation, constant pressure to show up. They become slaves to visibility. Their power only exists when they're active, when they're seen, when they're talking. But real leverage, it speaks when you don't. 4 types of modern leverage. Naval Ravikant describes 4 kinds of leverage. Labor, getting others to work for you, employees, freelancers. This is the oldest form. It's powerful, but limited by coordination and cost. Capital, using money to make more money. Investing, ownership, funding. Still requires access and trust, but scales with wisdom. Code, software that runs 24/7. You build it once, it runs forever. Think apps, automations, tools. Media content, writing, videos, podcasts, ideas. You create it once, it spreads endlessly. Code and media are the most powerful today because they scale with zero marginal cost and don't require permission. And here's the key. You can build them in silence. You can own them without performing. Leverage is quiet power. Think of the most leveraged people you know. They may not post often, they don't argue online, they don't explain themselves, but behind the scenes, they've written the book that changed lives. They've built the tool used by thousands. They've created a business that runs without their presence. They are not seen constantly, but their impact is felt constantly. Their power is systemic, not theatrical. Why performers burn out? When your power comes from being seen, it becomes your identity. So you have to protect it, guard it, nurture it, and slowly you become addicted to feedback, terrified of silence, obsessed with relevance. You start asking, did I post enough this week? Am I falling behind? What do people think of me right now? That's not power, that's dependence. But the person with leverage, they're asking different questions. What can I build that runs without me? How can I remove myself from the system? What can I automate, delegate, scale? Because real power doesn't need attention. It needs architecture. Examples of quiet leverage. The creator who wrote an evergreen article that generates income for years. The developer who built an API used by hundreds of businesses daily. The consultant who trained a team and now collects royalties. The entrepreneur who automated their product funnel and now focuses on vision. The writer whose book sells in 40 countries, quietly impacting lives. None of these people need to constantly perform, because their work performs on their behalf. Why you don't need to tell people anymore. Here's the shift. In the past, telling people what you do was necessary, because it was your only leverage. Today, if you build right, the world will discover you through your results, not your resume. You don't need to say, I'm a founder. Let the product say it. You don't need to say, I'm a writer. Let the words find their audience. You don't need to say, I'm a genius. Let the system you designed prove it, quietly. How to build leverage. Without the spotlight, here's how you begin. Pick a form of silent leverage, choose code. Media, capital, or scalable service. Work in deep focus, turn off the spotlight. Turn up the system. 1 hour of focus building is worth 10 hours of performance. Avoid audience addiction. Don't build for applause. Build for permanence. Silence is your filter. Use it. create repeatable impact, make something that works without you. If you disappear for a month, will your work still move? Let your work surface itself. You don't need to mark it with noise. Let discovery feel like serendipity, not self-promotion. Reflection. Prompt. Where in your life are you performing instead of building? What could you create that speaks without your presence? What would your life look like if your power didn't require you to be seen? Final thought. You don't need to raise your voice if your work echoes. You don't need to market your identity. If your impact multiplies, true leverage is quiet. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't beg for likes. It moves systems, shifts industries, and shapes lives. While you focus on the next creation, don't build an audience. Build a machine. And when the time comes, let the machine speak for you without a word. Chapter 6. Becoming Unstoppable by Becoming Unknowable. From the book. Never tell people what you do. You want to be powerful? Forget visibility. Forget popularity. Forget clarity. Instead, become difficult to define, impossible to pin down. Unknowable. Why? Because when people can't read you, they can't predict you. And when they can't predict you, they can't control you. Predictability is vulnerability. The world loves patterns. It studies your habits. It analyzes your routines. It draws lines from your past to predict your future. But once they know your rhythm, they can beat you to the punch mirror and compete with you, sabotage you with anticipation. Predictability gives others a map of your mind, and those with maps become gatekeepers. But the unknown, the unpatterned, the deeply private, it cannot be captured. It cannot be stopped. What it means to be unknowable. Being unknowable doesn't mean being cold or distant. It means being so deeply rooted in your own rhythm, your own knowing, that you no longer need to explain yourself. You don't have a label. You don't have a slogan. You don't even have a consistent personality for them to analyze. You are fluid, self-contained internally. Driven, responsive, not reactive, you are no longer playing a role. You are simply real and impossible to perform. The danger of being fully seen. Let's say people knew everything about you. Your routines, your plans, your goals, your insecurities, your next steps. Sounds like transparency, right? Sounds honest. But, in truth, it's dangerous. Because now anyone can disrupt your flow, mimic your strategy, leak your intentions, dull your edgeful visibility, makes you trackable. Trackable people are targetable. You become a moving target when you are unknowable. You become a moving target. One day you're writing, the next you're building, then you're gone, silent. Then you emerge stronger, different, evolved. No pattern to intercept, no signal to decode, no announcement to watch, just movement, untraceable, unstoppable. That's not inconsistency, that's freedom. The power of controlled ambiguity. Consider this. If everyone around you is broadcasting, detailing every move, emotion, and milestone, you only need to do one thing to become powerful. Stop explaining. That silence creates distance. That distance creates curiosity. That curiosity builds power. Now, when you finally act, when you speak, release, build, or leave, you control the moment. It's not expected. It's impactful because it came from nowhere. And because you were never pinned down, it's impossible to defend against. Historical echoes of the unknowable Bruce Lee adapted to every opponent because he had no fixed style. Be like water. Nikola Tesla worked for decades in partial secrecy, leaving behind myth and mystery that made his legacy immortal. Robert Greene calls this cultivating an air of unpredictability in the 48 Laws of Power, a tactic used by kings, generals, and revolutionaries. Naval Ravikant rarely promotes, explains, or performs, but when he speaks, the world listens. Not because he's loud, but because he's rare. These figures don't just hold knowledge, they embody mystery. And in a world of constant noise, mystery is magnetic, clarity is overrated. We've been told that we must always be clear. Clear goals, clear positioning, clear elevator pitch. But here's the truth. Clarity is not always power. Sometimes opacity is. If people are too certain about you, they stop imagining your depth. They stop respecting your potential. They box you into what they know and kill your evolution. But when you're just out of reach, just a bit undefined, they project possibility onto you. And that is influence. Tactics for becoming unknowable. Here's how to shift from visible to formless. Control your narrative or don't have one. Let go of the need to constantly update or define your journey. Let people catch up after you've already moved on. Work in silence. No updates, no previews, no coming soon. Build, release. Leave it there. Disrupt your patterns. Break your routine from time to time. Disappear when they expect you. Return when they don't. Embrace contradiction. Be a strategist who also loves poetry. Be a monk who codes. Be unpredictable on purpose. Never let people see your full deck. Keep a few cards close. Not because you're hiding, but because mystery is a resource. What you gain. When you stop being readable, when you stop broadcasting, you gain peace. No need to maintain a persona freedom. You're not trapped by expectations. Leverage. People guess, wonder, and adjust to you security. No one can weaponize what they don't understand edge, because no one knows where you'll strike next. The less they know, the more they prepare. The more they prepare, the more they fear. The more they fear, the more power you hold. Reflection amount. Where are you being overly defined in life right now? What if you were harder to predict? What would become possible? Who are you without explanation? Final thought. Don't just become strong. Become uncatchable. Don't just become smart. Become unreadable. Don't just become successful. Become untraceable. Because in the shadows of your unknowability, your power doesn't fade. It amplifies. The world will ask, what is this person up to? What do they even do? Let them ask. Let them wonder. And while they wonder, you move. You build, you strike. Chapter 7. Real ones don't broadcast. From the book, Never Tell People What You Do in Every Room, there are two kinds of people. Those who want to be seen and those who are watching. The first speak loudly. They tell you who they are, what they've done, what they're planning next. They broadcast their brilliance like a neon sign. The second, they say little, they observe, they listen, they think, and then when it counts, they act. That second group, those are the real ones. The loud ones chase presence. The quiet ones command it. There's a kind of energy you can't fake. Walks into a room and shifts the air. Not because it announces itself, but because it doesn't need to. It's not a performance. It's not a persona. It's a quiet gravity. The people who move mountains don't have to shout. They simply step forward, and everyone else makes space. Broadcasting is a plea for recognition. We live in a culture obsessed with visibility. Put yourself out there. Build your brand. Stay top of mind. But behind most broadcasting is a quiet question. Do you see me? Do you respect me? Do I matter? And here's the hard truth. The louder you try to prove your value, the more people assume you haven't built it yet. Because real ones, they don't need to prove anything. Their work speaks. Their aura speaks. Their impact echoes, even when their voice is silent. The currency of rarity. Let's talk about rarity. Why is gold valuable? Why is silence powerful? Why do people chase those who withdraw? Because when something is rare, it becomes respected. Most people are always online, always updating, always available. But those who hold back, those who only speak when it matters, those who disappear while they build, they create demand by their absence. When they finally speak, everyone listens. The algorithm is not your life. If you spend too much time in the online world, you start to believe a lie. If I stop posting, I'll disappear. If I don't keep talking, I'll lose relevance. If I'm not seen, I don't exist. But that's algorithmic thinking, not human truth. In real life, respect is earned, not broadcast. Reputation is quiet, not constant. Power is felt, not fed. Don't let digital noise trick you into thinking your presence is measured by pixels. Fame is a costume. Realness is bone deep. You can be famous and fake. You can be known and hollow. You can be loud and lost. Fame is an image, a costume you wear to be accepted. But realness is bone deep. It doesn't care if you're recognized. It doesn't need awards. It doesn't need followers. It's in how you move, how you show up for others, how you hold your word when no one is watching. Real ones don't broadcast. They live it, and that's what makes them unforgettable. Stop narrating. Start becoming. You don't need to narrate your every step, your every success, your every thought. You don't need to live like a reality show. Try this instead. Work quietly, improve privately, deliver sharply, then vanish again. Every time you choose not to explain yourself, you reclaim your energy, your dignity, your depth. Quiet doesn't mean weak. Let's destroy a myth. If you're quiet, you must be shy or unsure. Not true. Sometimes the quiet ones are the most dangerous in the room, the most observant, the most intentional, the most capable. Silence isn't absence, it's preparation. Don't confuse restraint for weakness. It might just be discipline in disguise. Your story doesn't need a stage. You have nothing to prove. Read that again. You don't need a stage to be valid. You don't need a microphone to have meaning. You don't need an audience to be excellent. You can build in silence. You can love in silence. You can heal in silence. And when the time comes, when the thing is ready, when the work is done, it will speak for itself. Practices for going quiet without losing power if you're ready. To move from broadcast mode to realness mode, try these. Go dark for 30 days, stop posting, stop announcing. Let your work breathe without narration. Cut filler conversations. Don't explain yourself to those who don't matter. Save your truth for those who've earned it. Let results be your resume. What you finish is louder than what you promise. Reduce your digital self-update less. Declutter your online identity. Let your presence feel rare, not constant. Train your silence. Not every idea needs to be shared. Keep some just for you. Reflection. Prompt. What am I broadcasting out of insecurity? What would it feel like to stop performing and just be? Who are the real ones in my life? What makes them powerful without being loud? Final thought. You don't have to fight to be seen. You only have to become something worth seeing. And the funny thing is, the more you stop trying to be visible, the more the right people will notice. Not because you asked, but because you earned it. So let the world keep talking. You build. You move. You evolve. And when the dust settles, they'll realize the most powerful one in the room was the one who said the least. Chapter 8. Let results talk, then walk away. From the book, Never Tell People What You Do. There's a moment after you finish something powerful. A deal is closed, a book is published, a code base is deployed, a life is changed, and there's silence, a stillness that begs the question, what now? Most people rush into the next announcement. They repost, rephrase, repackage. They want everyone to know what they did. But the real ones? They do something else entirely. They let the work stand, then they walk away. Don't dance for applause. We're taught to chase recognition, to harvest praise, to milk the moment. But doing that turns your victory into a performance. You dilute the purity of your effort. You reduce your results to content. Worse, your mind begins to crave applause after every action. That's not freedom. That's addiction. The solution? Let the work be the reward, not the response to it. The work should speak louder than you. Here's a test of truth. Can your work speak without your voice behind it? Can. Your project move people even if they never meet you? Your system deliver value without needing your story? Your presence be felt through outcomes, not explanations? When that happens, you've created something real, something alive, something that doesn't need its maker to stand next to it. That's power. Results are final. Narratives can be distorted. No one can argue with a finished result. They can doubt your potential. They can dismiss your journey. They can ignore your announcements, but they can't deny what's done. The product launched. The company shipped. The transformation happened. The record was broken. The system works. When you finish well, you don't have to defend yourself. The result becomes your shield. And once the result is out there, there's no need to stick around and argue. Just leave, quietly, fully, cleanly. The power of the disappearing act. Have you noticed how legends behave? They show up, they deliver, then they vanish. They don't hover over their legacy. They don't beg for recognition because they understand. Real presence doesn't require permanence. And real power doesn't overstay. In fact, disappearance enhances mystique. It says, I'm not here to be celebrated. I'm here to change something, then move on. Why you should leave the room after impact when you deliver a result. Something meaningful, beautiful, or powerful. The room is filled with energy. That moment is sacred, and staying too long kills the magic. You overtalk, you overexplain, you invite criticism. But when you leave after the delivery, you protect the moment. You preserve your power. You leave them thinking, that was different. You don't need to explain what you did. You already did it. Don't replay the highlight reel after success. There's temptation to screenshot the praise, to replay the comments, to keep bringing it up. But beware. The more you glorify the last win, the more you anchor yourself to the past. It's over. It's done. It's out. Don't become the person who always talks about what they did. Become the one who's already working on what's next. Build, drop, leave. Make this your mantra. Build, drop, leave. Build quietly. Drop the result, clean and sharp. Leave, before the world wraps you in noise. This rhythm trains you to focus on value, release without attachment, stay detached from outcome. Maintain inner freedom, and when you return again, you return with more, better, deeper, wiser. Not because you stayed visible, but because you stayed committed. You owe no explanations. Let this settle deep. You don't need to justify your silence. You don't need to preface your results. You don't need to explain why you left the room. The real ones never did. They dropped the album, they released the update, they delivered the transformation, and they didn't need to write a thread about it. Because the ones who matter, they felt it. The rest, they weren't ready anyway. Leave like a master. You know what separates the master from the amateur? Exit. The amateur clings, re-explains, reposts, waits for feedback. The master finishes, steps back, observes the ripple, and already begins, again, in the shadows. Masters don't linger. They don't brag. They let the room talk after they've left. Reflection. Prompt. Where in your life are you waiting for applause instead of moving on? What result could you deliver quietly, then vanish without explanation? What would your rhythm look like if you always walked away right after impact? Final thought. The world remembers those who deliver. Not those who explain. Not those who overstay. Not those who fish for applause. So do your work. Drop it like lightning. Then walk into the dark again, where the next thing is quietly forming. Because when you let results speak, you never need to speak for yourself again. Final reflection and thematic analysis. The journey recapped. You began this journey with a single paradox. The more you say, the less power you hold. The more you hide, the more leverage you gain. Chapter by chapter, you peeled back the layers of modern noise, exposure, identity, validation, and rediscovered something ancient and unbreakable: inner power. Strategic silence, pure presence. Let's revisit the core pillars we uncovered. 1. Silence is strength. From the very beginning, we learned that silence is not emptiness, it's containment, like a storm held behind still skies. Silence protects energy. It fosters concentration. It lets your work incubate before it is seen. It makes others wonder instead of assume. Silence is the new signal. In a world where everyone is screaming, the one who says nothing is often the most dangerous. 2. Identity is a trap. We also challenge the seductive stability of identity. You are not a founder, not a content creator, not a thought leader. You are a living force, a shapeshifter, a student, a mystery. To be knowable is to be narrated by others. To be unknowable is to be unbounded. Every time you say, I am Bakshi Kag, you risk freezing your own evolution. So you let go, you stop defining, and you started becoming. 3. Leverage is quiet. True power doesn't need to be present to be potent. It is a system running while you sleep, a product selling without your voice. A legacy moving lives while you meditate. You stopped performing. You started building systems. You began moving from effort-based identity to effortless power. The shift from being seen to being multiplied. 4. The real ones move differently. You saw the truth behind the neon lights. Real ones don't broadcast, don't explain, don't cling. They watch, wait, deliver, disappear, and through that stillness, they command attention without asking for it. They don't build brands, they build reality. 5. Let results talk. Then leave. And finally, you discovered the exit. The final proof of your transformation is this. You no longer need to be thanked. You no longer wait for recognition. You don't stick around to savor the applause. You do your work, you drop your impact, and you vanish again while the rest of the world echoes your name. Not because you said it, but because your results did. The core themes: detachment, letting go of needing to be understood, seen, or approved. This detachment is not apathy, it is sovereignty. Mystery power flows from what cannot be predicted. By becoming unknowable, you gain edge. Focus all, scattered energy is returned to your center. You no longer waste it on updates, drama, or performance. Disciplined silence is a discipline. So is restraint. They train you to become sharp, intentional, and present. Transformation. This book is about unbecoming the version of yourself that needed to be seen to survive, and instead, becoming someone who can vanish to evolve. Literary techniques used. This book isn't written like a traditional guide. It's a philosophical strike. It uses minimalist repetition to deepen key truths, poetic phrasing to slow the reader's breath, rhythmic silence to invite inward space paradoxes that challenge logic and awaken the soul, analogies from nature, warfare, and art to reframe power. It's not meant to inform, it's meant to transform. You don't finish this book with notes. You finish it with a shift in your posture. Broader reflections. This book echoes wisdom from Stoicism. He who speaks often speaks from fear. Taoism. The sage does not display himself, and therefore he shines. Zen. The sound of one hand clapping is enough. Naval Ravikant. Play long-term games with long-term people, but never reveal your hand. It pushes against toxic self-branding, hustle theater identity, obsession online, vulnerability for engagement digital. Addiction to being known, and it offers something timeless in return: stillness. Power, peace, precision. Lessons you can take into life. Let them wonder. You don't need to explain. Results, announcements, mystery. Identity, silence. Exposure systems. Performance, exit. Ego. If you do this right, people won't know what you do, but they'll feel it in every space you enter. Final thought: you are not here to be loud. You are not here to be liked. You are not here to be legible. You are here to become a force. So go quiet, go deep, go build. And when you return, let them feel the shift without a single word.